Winners and Losers of 2023, Jose Chil de Castro, Part 2. I'm Yvette Peterson, and this is an auditing insanity flashback to January 2, 2024. 2023 was going to be the year that Jose Chil de Castro finally got a real victory in court. At the start of the year he had two federal civil rights cases, one that had been thrown out but then miraculously revived based in Ironton, Ohio, and another based in Massachusetts that he had managed to convert from a federal civil rights lawsuit into a federal copyright lawsuit against Kate Peter, Josh Abrams, and YouTube/Google. Because he was able to transform his case in Massachusetts, he was able to take a variation of his original charges and refile those charges in California's Superior Court. This time omitting Josh Abrams and naming Kate Peter, along with Team Skeptic, Daniel Clement and Michael Blue Bacon Piratini. The charges were ridiculous at face value. De Castro essentially charged all four with taking part in a conspiracy to harass and stalk him. He asserted that all of the alleged transgressions happened in the state of California, yet only one of the incidents he described happened in California, and he could only prove that one of the defendants, Daniel Clement, even was in the state during times the incidents happened. He immediately bungled the service of the defendants. While he was initially successful in serving some of the defendants, he then amended his complaint without properly serving them. Even though he briefly had a default judgment against Kate Peter granted by the court clerk as she didn't respond to service in time, the judge never affirmed that judgment. The only defendant actively participating in the court case was Blue Bacon, who did so by his own decision and quickly lawyered up after trading nonsense motions with De Castro for most of the early part of the year. As 2024 begins, De Castro failed to show for the last hearing he had scheduled in the case, but so did Blue Bacon's attorney. No real hearings are scheduled in the immediate future and the trial date is set for 2025. It has become a case that De Castro has forgotten about as he's either lost interest in it or he has bigger issues to deal with in his other pending court cases. His Massachusetts-based federal copyright lawsuit became a nightmare for De Castro as soon as the amateur Massachusetts-based lawyers used by Abrams and Peter were suddenly joined by super lawyers from Google/YouTube, who had endless funding and no patience for De Castro's antics. De Castro's strategy had been to drag all his court cases out to the point where his opposition would run out of money and settle with him out of desperation. In all of his court cases he would refuse to directly state a claim and drag out things for as long as he could to strangle his opponent into submission. While he spent months trying to strangle Kate Peter with contempt motions and even an all-out demand for disclosure of all personal biases and prejudices that the judge may have against him, he abandoned the case from mid-February to the end of April as he was distracted by a new Las Vegas-based federal civil rights lawsuit which we'll get to later. He returned at the end of April with a third amended complaint that he claimed was a supplement to his second amended complaint. YouTube/Google then filed a motion to transfer the case to the Northern District of California or, alternatively, have the judge dismiss the case on the grounds that De Castro never stated a claim against YouTube/Google. By July, it was over. Judge Allison D. Burroughs quickly ruled against De Castro's attempts to hold Kate Peter in contempt of court. She then denied his demand for disclosure from her in a sternly worded response. She then granted YouTube/Google's motion to dismiss the case, granted De Castro's motions to dismiss Kate Peter and Josh Abrams' counterclaims from when the case was a federal civil rights lawsuit, and that was that. De Castro pledged to appeal the case or refile it later but has yet to come back to it by 2024. His second federal lawsuit, the one based out of Ironton, Ohio, was going just as badly for a lot of the same reasons. For nearly a year, De Castro kept the lawsuit against Pam Wagner and the rest of the Ironton-related defendants on life support. He blew through deadlines and orders to actually state a claim. It was dismissed in late 2022 after he apparently blew through yet another deadline, but miraculously, the judge in the case accepted his late filing, reviving the case for 2023. The two sets of defendants almost immediately filed separate motions to state a claim and one for summary judgment on the pleadings. Both essentially argued the same thing, that De Castro was again delaying things to stretch out the case, but the second set of defendants had the more pressing issue that De Castro eliminated nearly any mention of them with his second amended complaint. Eventually, as the case seemed to be heading to the discovery phase, the judge had enough. In early August, Judge Michael R. Barrett granted both motions, essentially dismissing the case. But it wasn't over. That would be too easy. De Castro filed multiple motions to reconsider, loudly complaining that he should be allowed to amend his complaint one more time and have the judge tell him what he did wrong so he could file a new amended complaint. His proposed amended complaint was, frankly, insane. It contained a bizarre new theory that the arrest that inspired the lawsuit was somehow invalid because the clock on the wall in the Ironton City Hall didn't match Google's atomic clock, so he wasn't trespassing in the building because the clock was set to the wrong time. The judge wanted no part of this, denying his request. De Castro is currently appealing the ruling. His initial filing in the appeal is due on January 3, 2024. Remarkably, De Castro picked up a new federal civil rights lawsuit in March of 2023 following an arrest in Las Vegas for interfering and obstructing an officer involved in a traffic stop. After moving to Las Vegas in early 2023, De Castro began to audit traffic stops. With every new encounter with Las Vegas police, he grew more brazen. Eventually, he apparently convinced himself that he was immune to any action the police could take and would stand his ground and ignore orders from the police. In mid-March he put this to the test as he came across a traffic stop near the strip mall he was living in. He was asked to back away from the car involved in the traffic stop by the police officer conducting the stop, refused, and was eventually arrested for interfering and obstructing the stop. De Castro would later claim that while he was detained at the scene, he was punched in the testicles when police searched him and he had suffered permanent nerve damage in his left arm after an officer had gently restrained him while he was awaiting transport to a local jail. Almost immediately filing a federal civil rights lawsuit, De Castro soon would find that fellow auditor Floyd Wallace was in the Las Vegas area and had been arrested for trespassing at a police station. De Castro helped Wallace file a federal civil rights lawsuit that was eerily near identical to the one he had filed and had his legal team assist Wallace going forward. Unlike his other federal civil rights lawsuits, his new lawsuit is still alive, but on life support, in 2024. Most recently, De Castro ignored a ruling by the judge that threw out the vast majority of De Castro's complaints, giving him leave to refile some of the charges in a very specific manner. De Castro ignored the judge's ruling, essentially refiled all of his charges including the ones that were thrown out with prejudice, and the lawsuit is currently dealing with the ramifications of De Castro's actions. The Floyd Wallace lawsuit ended in late summer after De Castro and Wallace had a falling out after Heather Dollarhide accused Wallace of sexual assault. Wallace's filings suddenly asserted that he needed time to find a pro bono legal counsel and was seeking a long delay in his court case. When that was not immediately granted, he voluntarily dropped the case but retained the ability to refile at a later time. Floyd Wallace would then leave the country for Brazil, where he is currently residing and has no plans to return to the United States, even to resolve his outstanding criminal charges. De Castro is facing criminal trial for the charges in Las Vegas of interfering with a traffic stop and obstructing an officer later this month. We'll wrap up Chill De Castro's year tomorrow with part 3 of winners and losers of 2023, Chill De Castro.